Newsmark viewers, we are happy to meet you again. I hope you're healthy and well. As the Newsmark team, we continue to bring you the latest updates on the Russia-Ukraine war. In this video, I will share with you a very important information from the front line. As it is known, supply lines are of vital importance during the war. And if an army cannot use its supply lines effectively, it can face serious problems. The protection of supply lines is an indispensable part of the war strategy, and any failure in this regard can lead to major disasters for the army. We've seen this happen many times in the Russian-Ukrainian war, and the Russian army needs to maintain continuous supply activities in the occupied territories. However, since these territories belong to Ukraine, the Ukrainian armed forces did not leave any resources or infrastructure for the Russian army when they withdrew. Therefore, the continuous support of the Russian army is critical to its success. However, Ukrainian saboteurs are carrying out highly effective operations in this regard, leaving the Russian military in a difficult situation. In recent days, as part of these operations, a very important sabotage attack was carried out on a railway line. What are the details of this attack and the latest developments? Let's analyze it together. But as Newsmark, we continue to bring you developments regarding the Russia-Ukraine war. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so that you don't miss our daily reports and explanations. You know that I also read all of your comments on our videos. Please continue to share your ideas about our content in the comments and tell us in the comments what content you would like to see on the Newsmark channel. Let's start if you are ready. Newsmark reports. So the war between Russia and Ukraine is like a complex chess game with many different dimensions. The Russian army started this war claiming superiority over Ukraine in every field over time. However, it has become clear that these claims of the Russian military don't reflect reality. If the Russian army was really as strong as it claimed, today Russian leader Vladimir Putin could have declared Kiev as the capital of the Russian Federation. However, this did not happen. Instead, we have the picture of a Russian army trapped in a narrow space and unable to advance. The situation of the Russian army has now become obvious. Nevertheless, the Russian propaganda units are still trying to spread to claim that the Russian armed forces are successful through different methods. But why do they continue this propaganda? I'll answer to this question later in this report. But first, let's talk about the operation to destroy the supply trains of the Russian army. Recently, the Russian people woke up in the morning to a huge cloud of smoke. At first, it was not clear what was this smoke, but it was rising quite close to the city. All the Russian citizens were curious about the source of the smoke, especially near Moscow. Such a thick layer of smoke had not been seen for a long time, and the public reacted with fear and panic, obviously, and the authorities were not making any statements. However, local sources were quick to find out the details of this incident, and the sources of the smoke was a train locomotive carrying equipment belonging to the Russian army. So according to information from the region, a train fire occurred in Yaroslav, a city very close to the Russian capital Moscow, and this train had just started its mission and was moving from the eastern regions of Russia to Moscow, carrying out equipment and ammunition from the countries such as North Korea and China. And these munitions were to be shipped from Moscow to the front lines, and therefore the train was of a critical importance for the Russian armed forces. However, those who had not lost sight of the free world mobilized to prevent this train from reaching Moscow in order to stop Russia's aggression in Ukraine. So according to reports, saboteurs sneaked onto the rail line at night and sabotaged the rail cabins. So this sabotage caused a major fire in the locomotive of the train, and according to the regional sources, the locomotive of this train carrying ammunition for the Russian army has been destroyed. Although there is information that some of the ammunition has burned, exact information has not yet been obtained. While official Russian sources remained silent, unofficial Russian sources were full of anger. And the question was often asked why Russian intelligence failed to prevent this sabotage, since Yaroslav was a logistically important crossroads for the Russian army. This was a major disaster for the Russian army. And according to reports, the sabotage operation, which took place so close to Moscow, caused panic among the local population. And this critical incident has led to the criticisms of local leadership. But this criticism is usually, voiced in public and does not affect the time it takes for the leadership to make decisions and take action. So there is therefore safe to say that the Russian people were left alone in the face of this horror. Around the same time, panic broke out in the occupied Crimean Peninsula, and according to the regional sources, the smoke was seen rising to Novofedorovka near the Saki air base. And according to reports, explosions occurred at several points near the base. However, the Russian authorities have still not made an explanatory statements on this matter, and there is also a noticeable silence from the sabotage groups. According to the regional sources, this was a sabotage attack, but the Russian leadership is withholding the details of this incident in order to ally security concerns in the region and protect Russia's legitimacy. But remaining silence, the saboteurs are waging a psychological war against the Russian army. So at the beginning of this report, I mentioned the claims of the successes of the Russian armed forces. The Russian leader is constantly trying to keep these claims on the agenda, and in this way they want to ensure that the Russian military is perceived as a threat in the international arena. But in addition, there are many Western countries and people who support the Ukrainian armed forces. In order to cut off this support, the propaganda efforts of the Russian leadership must succeed. So if the Russian leadership's propaganda effort fail, the Western nations may rise up and stop their support for Ukraine. So this would pave the way for the Russian leadership's plans for Ukraine to succeed. But both the Ukrainian people and Western societies have a great responsibility in this process, and it is extremely important to prevent the unfounded propaganda of the Russian leadership and to ensure the dissemination of accurate and real information. So it should not be forgotten that the Russian Federation is the one who started this war, and it is clear that this war will not end if they invade Ukraine. This is because Vladimir Putin ultimate goal is to restore Russia to its historical borders, and in order to realize this goal, he will not hesitate to set the whole world, especially Europe, on fire. So in this context, the resistance of the Ukrainian people and the support of Western societies are of a great importance. Both sides need to act in solidarity and work to ensure the dissemination of truthful information and accurate news. Unless misinformation and propaganda are combated, Russia's expansionist policies will not be prevented. But now, it's your time. I forgot about that. What do you think? And how likely do you think sabotage activities by the opposition groups inside Russia are to increase the future? And to what extent could such activities disturb Russia's military operations? And how might internal threats and sabotage of Russian military's combat capability affect the course of the war? Let me know in the comments, because you know that I read and I care a lot about all of your comments.